Welcome back, Corporations Committee. As we all come back from, and now that we're being recorded, all the better. As we're coming back from lunch, waiting on a couple more members. We should have notified the college that we were going to have an extra 40 people eating lunch today. I'm not sure they were totally prepared, but the food is good. So thank you to Sheridan College and committee. You did see we were provided with water bottles from the Northern Wyoming Community College District, as well as some peach salsa from Civics 307. The swag around here is great, being a legislator. We did pay for our lunches and you get 1 hour. So apparently for $10.50, you get an hour of anything you can eat here. So those of you who still have 14 minutes remaining, you need to go. Would like to send a shout out to Representative Fortner and Senator McEwen visiting, not too far away, but welcome. And we're going to get into our redistricting discussion. As you remember, where we left it last time, committee, we have agreed on regionalizing districts. And so you have a couple of options before us today and several letters from county clerks around Wyoming on how they would encourage us to proceed in regionals. With that, any opening comments from LSO about where we are with contracts, the public portal, and general updates?
Mr. Chairman, I believe Michael Swank is on the Zoom and he, I believe, is ready to do a couple things for the intro, including a more detailed update on where the public portal is and that type of stuff. So I turn it over to Michael.
Thank you. Afternoon, Mr. Swank, floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, my name is Michael Swank and I'm a staff member here at the Legislative Service Office. The biggest update really is on the online GIS public portal. LSO finalized an agreement or a contract with the vendor last week, and we received a message today that we will be receiving the initial product potentially either later today or early next week. That will go directly to our IT staff to see that it starts to get set up and tested and so forth. But that is the status of that. It took a week and a half to get the agreement settled, and then I know the Aptitude has been setting up the site, getting it initially worked out, and then they will be providing it to us as soon as they can. The only other summary is that at the last meeting, I believe it was a request by Senator Scott. I do have kind of a summary of the counts of different geographies that may impact how districts are drawn. If you recall at the last meeting, I mentioned there are roughly 55,000 blocks. It's actually about 54,000, so I was off by about 1,000 blocks. But there are other geographies such as voter tabulation districts, or what would be the same as voting precincts, block groups, and census tracts. So blocks go into block groups go into tracts, and then voting districts are actually not a part of that sequence of geography. They're separate and obviously established based on the local county's desires for voting precincts and districts. But I do have that information, and at the appropriate time, I can go over that information at the committee's discretion. If there's any other questions, I'm ready for those as you desire.
Any questions from the committee for Mr. Swank? Not seeing any at this time, Michael, but I'm hang tight. With that, we do have a couple of legislators also joining us in the room, I think, to listen in as we proceed today. So I'm not sure where we want to kick off. I know the county clerks want to talk, and Senator Scott, you've presented a plan as well. So how about we kick it off with you? Oh, Representative Ayer, do you have a question?
I would like a discussion. Last meeting, we eliminated the guiding principle of putting remaining with 70 House districts and 30 Senate districts. And I think I'd like to make a motion to insert that as part of our guiding principles.
To do 60 and 30?
Yes.
You want to have that discussion to start today?
Sure.
Set. Okay, first discussion will be if we have 60 House seats and 30 Senate seats. Did you want to talk about your thoughts on that, Representative?
I just think it should be one of our guiding principles. If it turns out that there's real good reasons to vary from that, then we can, but that's, to the extent possible, we should leave that in as one of our guiding principles.
Why? Representative Bear.
Because it's worked well in the past and we only grew by 2% statewide. I think it's.
Okay. Senator Scott, thoughts?
Reason I seconded it, the sizes have been working for us. I was in the House when it was over 60, and it was a problem, Mr. Chairman, just in fitting into the facilities. They went up to 64 at one point, and that was more of a problem. And Mr. Chairman, as I've worked with these numbers, I thought initially we might have to vary it a little, but frankly, I can't see anything in the numbers that would compel us to do that. With the census results we actually got, they're close enough to where we've been.
Representative Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to add to that, I think that I think that just if we just go back to holding to those principles, I think it keeps it simple and straight and to the point. 30 and 60, they're good even numbers, they're well balanced, and I think that if we start talking about going down from that, that we're frankly needlessly muddling an already very complex and enduring process, one, and for another, if we were to decrease the number of total seats, that only dilutes the voice of the rural population, because obviously you're going to have to expand your population per district. So I think that it's a good idea that we go back to tacking that principle back into our list. Thank you.
Okay. Well, Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also speaking in favor of the motion. Additionally, with regard to the chairman and the president of the both houses, they have a limited number of people that they can assign to committees and everything. We have a lot of committees, and oftentimes they can't find enough people to place on the committee. So I think that we've become accustomed to that number. It's an even divisible number, and that it just works to make it a guiding principle. As the good representative mentioned, if there are compelling reasons to vary from that, then so be it. But just to make it a guiding principle is a wise way to move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Well, I sense the conversation is going, but let me have my 1 minute to go down with the ship, apparently. And so I think all the members know that I'm generally advocating for a 52-26 plan, decrease in the number of legislators by 12, which I don't honestly think is enough, right? We've decreased the executive branch by 15 to 18%, a little bit more than that. We seem to cut our county budgets, our city budgets. And for some reason, we can't seem to cut our own budget, or we did cut the LSO's budget, but we seem to believe that we desperately need 60 of us and 30 of us to continue the business of government in Wyoming, which I just don't agree, right? So I think Arizona has 60-30, Oregon has 60-30, much larger populations than us. Other rural states have less, right? I think there are 4 states that have less legislators than Wyoming. And I certainly appreciate that we represent constituents and the geography is broad. But I keep running the numbers as well, and 60 and 30 does not fit ideally in the regional plan that we all agreed to last time. I mean, we have some information before us today that you got to take 2,000 from here and 4,000 need to be added over there. And I don't see that working as easy as a plan that you can do 52 House seats all within county regions without having to cross lines. I know it hurts and it pits legislators against one another, but I guess I've also been the person advocating to eliminate the number of school districts, reduce the number of counties. You know, we seem to be able to cut budgets for the executive branch, but can't seem to reduce the level of government in the state of Wyoming. So I would strongly continue to encourage a 52-26 plan, but I'm sure I could bring that separately and try to convince you at a later date that it fits better should I need to. So other discussions on adding 60-30 to the guiding principles. Make sure there's no legislators in the room who want to talk. Okay, committee, all those in favor of the motion to try to do a 60-30 plan as a guiding principle, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion's carried. We are now on 60-30.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Case.
I supported you on that motion, but I want you to know that now we've adopted almost every single principle that we adopted 10 years ago. So feeling kind of smug about that.
That's so quite honestly, Senator Case, right? I've looked at the last 3 decades we've done this. In the last 3 times since 92, when we redistrict, all we do is try to make it work, and everybody's district just gets to move a little bit. And after 3 cycles of doing that, you have some odd looking districts. And so maybe not this term, but 10 years from now, I would hope at some point we come back and start afresh and anew and say what really works geographically in the state. And I don't think it's 60-30. I think we keep trying to force puzzle pieces to fit that. And I guess we'll hear today how Senator Scott's plan works with 60-30 and what might need to be done. Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, before we get to the regional stuff, I did a county at large apportionment strictly according to the Wyoming Constitution. Do you want to talk about that briefly?
Yeah, how about take 5 or 8 minutes? We've had a lot of discussion on, especially from one of the political parties, about how we could make a redistricting plan more in line with the Constitution and the belief of every county having ensured representation. So yes, please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, our Wyoming Constitution does tell us to give a single district to every county, both Senate and the House. That was proposed last time by some of the people who testified for us. And I thought we ought to take a look at what one would look like, because we do have to follow our Constitution unless it leads us to violate the US Constitution. And so what I did, and I think it's been passed out to you, the method is quite simple. You allocate 1 seat to every county, and then you add extra seats till you reach whatever your number is. And the way you do that is you take the county that has the largest population give the extra seat to that, and do that progressively until you run out. That's been passed out. The results you get are for the Senate, you would have then Niobrara County would be the smallest, Albany County would be the largest. The difference in population is 2,467 against Albany County, 37,066. That has 15.02 times as large, or 1,502%. Mr. Chairman, as the courts have interpreted the 14th Amendment, there is no way any court is going to uphold that kind of a thing. In the House, we do 60 members, do it that way. It turns out that, again, the smallest would be Niobrara County with 2,467. The largest would be Teton County with 2 representatives at 11,665, 4.72 times larger than Niobrara County, 472%. Again, that isn't going to stand the court muster. And the courts really are saying that it's 14th Amendment. I think it's hard to argue with them and fruitless to try. So it does say to me that to comply with the US Constitution, we have to ignore that provision in the Wyoming Constitution. I did look at combine a few of them, do it slightly differently, and that doesn't get the job done either. So it's there in the written material, you can see, but I thought it was important that we at least take a look at that to see if we could feasibly comply with it, with the Wyoming constitutional provision, and stay within the
what the courts have said of the requirements of the United States Constitution. And I don't see any way, I did not, Mr. Chairman, look how large you'd have to make the house. I think there was a calculation made based off the Niobrara population that it would have to be over 200 members, 220 or 30, I forget exactly what he came up with. But the trouble is you'll hit some counties that then are entitled to a representative and a half. And then you have to get larger to deal with that. And you'd have a house size, and that'd be the easiest one to comply, would be somewhere between 220 and 400 or 500. That's, I think, not feasible and be a mistake. So it just isn't going to work to do a county at large apportionment, Mr. Chairman.
Committee, any thoughts? Okay. Well, thank you, Senator Scott, for, spending the time to give it the best try you could and seeing if you believed it could meet the constitutional requirements. And I know we've had some opinions and read the court opinion from the early 90s regarding the 14th Amendment, and your conclusions seem to be in line with the conclusions of the state Supreme Court at that time. With that, Senator Scott, you've also passed out some information on a possible redistricting plan, and I believe, is that the same that's in the meeting materials in a map view?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. Want me to go through that?
I think this time that works. Yes, Senator Scott, proceed.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, let me say overall, what I did was listen to discussion at the last committee meeting. And what I did was adopt the more regions and smaller regions provision that the LSO staff had used, with the exception that I made Fremont County its own region. And I think that is a few more regions than we used last time. They're a little smaller. And last time we had trouble getting plans done locally in the two largest regions, which were the southwest corner, which included in that time Carbon and Sweetwater, made them a separate region. And in the northeast region, which included the Campbell Crook West and plus the Converse Niobrara, Goshen Platte. And so those were split up. So that's how the regions were selected. It was listening to discussion at this committee last time. And Mr. Chairman, if it's all right, I'd like to just go right through the regions and point out the features here. Would add one other thing. The write-up is going to say how many we have to move people from one to a region to another. And on the third page of the thing, there's a districting population margin. If you're going to do some districts within a region, you need a little margin so you're not right up against the deadlines, because you can't divide census blocks. And there's some cases where you don't want, where there'll be things you might be forced to, you don't want to, you need a little margin. So I'm suggesting at a minimum where we have to move areas with populations from one region to another, you got to add to the minimum at least 40 extra people per house district. And it might have to be a little larger than that when you actually come to draw the plans, Mr. Chairman. And that's important to keep in mind.
Hey, Senator Scott, if I could ask LSO, could you perhaps put either the map that we'll be discussing or the number chart just for people at home and the audience here can, I think it's easier to track, especially talking about numbers if you have the map pulled up on the screen for those of us here. Thanks. Go ahead, Mr. Representative Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, I started arbitrarily in the southeast corner, Laramie County, population 100,000. You can see the numbers there. it, you can fit 5 Senate and 10 House districts into that county on a 30-60 plan. It's relatively heavy in population for that, but it's within the court plus or minus 5% guidelines that are the way we've implemented their 10% overall guideline.
So Senator Scott, that would mean all 10 of the House districts in Laramie County would actually have more people than the average, even though we're the second fastest growing county.
It
the
would be more than average. It would be 104.5% of the average, which is within the plus or minus 5% guideline. And we would get rid of that excursion up to Goshen County to capture the prison that's in the current plan. We'd have to get rid of that. And I think everybody'd be happy. I hope everybody'd be happy to do that. You might need to shed if you have trouble, I think you can district the county whether you have enough margin, but if you had trouble, you might have to shed a few small regions to Albany County, which is on the low side, your neighbors. That would be something we'd have to deal with if when you try in Laramie County, you can't get a decent plan. Albany County is the next one. They're on the low side this time. 2 senators, four representatives, 96.4% of the ideal, again, within the plus or minus 5%. They previously have given up part of the county, the Rock River area, to the Carbon County District. It might be wise not to do that this time. Make the county whole and district within that county as a region. Natrona is the next one. We're 4 senators, 8 representatives. Like Laramie County, we're a little heavy, but it's at 104% instead of 104.5%. The Fremont County, and this is where I did depart from the LSO's regionalization. There, 2 senators, 4 representatives. They're at 102% of the ideal. And you can see in each one of these, I've defined how many people you could, staying within that ideal, either take extra or give up to surrounding areas. Fremont County, you've got a bit of a special consideration in that you want a tribal district to comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act. We've had such a district ever since we went to single member districts. And it takes some skill and a little complication to draw one that'll meet the federal requirements. They may need a little extra margin there. So something that brings them closer to the ideal is probably a better idea. Next, Sheridan Johnson County. I'll put them together. They're together now. They're 2 senators, 4 representatives at 102.4% of the ideal. So they're relatively close to it. They could absorb some more, or give up some more. You can see the figures there. Johnson County doesn't quite have enough people to be its own House district, but they have traditionally taken in the part of the Sheridan County that is the Claremont Arvada school district. And that does tend to function as part of the Johnson County community for many purposes. So that makes some sense. This would be a case where if locally they wanted to have the Sheridan County representatives at large, you could have 3 at large in Sheridan County. and one for Johnson County, if that's how you wanted to do it locally. It'd be a local option, I would think. And again, those two together make a sensible district. Northeast corner, which we defined this time following the LSO recommendations as Campbell, Crook, and Weston. The total population, when you do that, it's 3 senators and 6 representatives, but it's a little too large. It would be 105.8% of the ideal. So to get down within that, you'd have to give up at least 474 people territory, including that number. Plus, again, you need a little margin so you can district, sub-district within that. If you used the guideline I'm suggesting of at least 40 extra per house district, there's 6 house districts, that's 240 more, Mr. Chairman. So that's how that would work. And we hope to get none of the counties are the right size to be their own district. So you're going to have to cross county lines in some scale. My guess is we'll wind up asking the people that do that, okay, you've got to get rid of at least this number. Where would you take it? Probably, I think the answer will be southern Campbell County, which is very similar to the adjacent areas in Converse County. The next district is called it East Central, Converse, Goshen, Niobrara, and Platte. They would be a little on the small side. They're 97% of the ideal, so within the guidelines, you could do it entirely within there, but it would make sense to solve the problem in the Campbell Crook Weston area by sending some of that territory to one or more of the East Central districts. You'd get closer to the ideal in both cases. The next one, Mr. Chairman, is one of the ones going to be more difficult to deal with, but not as bad as we had originally feared. The Bighorn Basin. The 3 senators, 6 House members. That would give you a district that was 92.7% the size of the ideal district. So you don't want to do anything radical like change the number of members up there. You'd get trouble that way, but you'll have to get some more population from somewhere. What we did last time in the current district is Shoshone and Lyside areas went to the Bighorn Basin. I think we'll have to do that again because it's just given the topography there. That's where you want to go. We heard a plea last time to put all of Yellowstone Park in one district. Makes sense to put it in the Bighorn Basin. And frankly, that involves the people at Old Faithful and Madison. And they're isolated no matter how we do the district. You just can't unisolate them, given that the park roads are closed in the wintertime. So you might do that. That's not very many people, I suspect. Mostly they're going to have to come out through the Shoshone-Lyside area. And if there isn't enough population to do that, and you'll need, again, about 240 additional population so that you got the margin to do the districting. I hate to say it, but they might have to come into northwest Natrona County, which is my own district, which I don't like. But the area immediately adjacent to Lysite and Natrona County is really as much a part of that community as it is the rest of Natrona. I represented Lysite itself as one for 10 years when the population situation was the other way around. And that area does fit with Fremont County pretty well up there. So the Bighorn Basin, I think, is the larger population district. If we had to reach clear to the Casper urban area to make up the needed numbers, then you get very disparate and very distant relationships where people really are just unrepresented. And I don't think we want to do that if we can avoid it, and I think we can. Next one I've got is the Carbon Sweetwater District. Again, this was the LSO recommendation. 10 years ago, we put that in the southwest corner. The Carbon County by itself is about 3/4 of a Senate district or a House district and a half. So it's Carbon County is going to dominate that Senate district. It needs to stretch somewhere else, and Sweetwater County is where it goes now. And I think it makes sense to continue that, Mr. Chairman. But it's going to make a district that is, the Carbon County district is going to include quite a bit of geography that is away from Carbon County over in Sweetwater County. They go clear up to Farson right now. And I suspect that'll have to continue into the Rock Springs urban area a little bit. Mr. Chairman, I don't see a good alternative that gets away from that. They are relatively similar in the whole I-80 corridor and the mineral developments and whatnot. It makes sense. You could do Carbon Sweetwater entirely within its own, but then you've got a problem with the southwest corner, which is the final one. Lincoln, Sublette, Teton, and Uinta. Lincoln County is within the population margins, Mr. Chairman, for being its own Senate district. But it is the county we have most frequently split. We did it in the our predecessors did it in the 1965 reapportionment. We've done it. It's been that way a little better than half the time, I think, since we had to go to this system. And, you know, you have two halves of the county, you got to go through Idaho to get from one to the other. It's by itself, they have 4 senators down there. They're at 93.7% of what they need. They've got to acquire a little, the strict math is 980 to make it practical districting. It'll be more like 1,100 from somewhere. And the places they border on are the Bighorn Basin through Yellowstone Park, and they're short in population and geographically distant. Fremont County, which will have its own needs for population, and the Carbon Sweetwater area. So the districts there do go into Sweetwater County, and we'll have to, I think, continue that, Mr. Chairman, to the tune of about 1,100 people. But that would be the way, Mr. Chairman, that I think we could regionalize these. And I feel strongly, and I think the committee did vote that way at the last meeting, to do a regional system, because with the local knowledge and being able to draw on the expertise of the county clerks locally, I think we'll get a much better plan that will work better, that the general population be able to understand better. And that's important, so they know who's representing them. And so, Mr. Chairman, that's my recommendation on the regions.
All right, questions? Let me throw one at you, Senator Scott, because I've looked through your plan and I guess my concern is that, only 9 of our 23 counties grew in the last decade. And the ones that grew the most, Laramie, Natrona, Campbell, Sheridan, and arguably Park a little bit, they are negatively, in my mind, impacted by this plan, where the areas that have lost the most population, your Goshen Platte, Niobrara, Converse area, your Washakie Hot Springs, they're under the percentage, if we did this completely at a divide by 60, we're helping support them at the cost of, let's say, my county, where the math works because there are currently 10 legislators there, that we're all going to be 4.5% over. I mean, same in Natrona County, you're going to be 4% over. And if I'm guessing, you look at the last 20 years, like LSO presented at our last meeting, there are the same 6 counties that continue to grow relative to all other counties. And it looks like all 6 of these, arguably Lincoln not included, are kind of on the losing end of this plan, that they're already going to be above the target numbers, and they are most expected, according to projections, to continue to grow. And so I guess does that concern you, especially in being in Natrona County, that you're already going to be over deviation, and the projections from the census say that your county will grow faster than other counties in the state? And is that fair to your constituents?
Mr. Chairman, let me answer that first within the context of Natrona County. We are 104% of the ideal size. We are a unified community. There's a very small corner up toward right next to Lyside that is partly Casper community and partly Shoshone and Riverton communities. But we are basically one community. If we were to try to go back and hit the ideal, you'd have to remove enough you'd have to create a district, Mr. Chairman, that would be half in Natrona County and half in some other county. Or you'd have to nibble on the fringes a bit all the way around, and you'd wind up, however you did it, with people whose representation was coming from a population center that was at least 2 driving hours away from the population that would be represented, because Natrona County, most of the population is in the Casper urban area. Mr. Chairman, I don't think it does my constituents any good to be theoretically represented by somebody who is not part of our community, who is physically that distant from them. I think what you really wind up with, and I'm sure whoever it was would make an effort, but you really wind up with a block of population that is effectively unrepresented. And I think, Mr. Chairman, the same is true of Laramie County. You could create a Senate district, I suppose, that Albany County could absorb another 1,600 people perfectly well in a Senate district. But I don't think it would help the people in Cheyenne any to have to go over the hill to Laramie to meet with their senator or their representative. I don't think you improve the representation. So, Mr. Chairman, as long as we're within the population districts, I think we ought to stick with them. And I think if you start going beyond what you've got, we've always had an irrational district or two where people are represented by somebody very, very distant. Right now, it's Farson in the Carbon County district. But you simply multiply that if you try to go further than the court guidelines require, Mr. Chairman. And I think it would hurt the people that you're trying to help.
Further discussion on Senator Scott's proposal before you? That's pretty much one of the only proposals before you for a regional plan according to those specifics. Let me check with other legislators in the room. Any thoughts on that plan, Senator Representative? Have you seen in the meeting materials or any other thoughts on any plan while you're here, just here to listen? Okay, just making sure. Any legislators in the chat room? Representative Stith, Representative Sweeney, Representative Ottman, any discussion? Seeing none currently. Any public comment on the Senator Scott proposal? Mr. Correnti? Oh, Representative Bear, how are you down there? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there are a lot of good features presented or contained in Senator Scott's plan here. I think one change that perhaps should be considered is to combine Region 9 and Region 10. And if you combine the two, then they're within the 5% average. And I think there's good reason when you consider community of interest, energy related businesses, et cetera, there's good reason to do that. I think
Senator
that should be considered.
Scott, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, and we did that 10 years ago. The difficulty you have is when it gets that large. Last year, we were very fortunate. Senator Martin and Senator Cooper took it on as a project to get a locally drawn plan, and it burned them out. They spent a whole summer getting everybody to agree. I think we'll have, with this proposal, we'll have the same, a similar result, but the committee will have to get involved in, okay, we need to shed some population from Sweetwater County over into the Uinta-Lincoln area. Where should that come from? I would hope we would ask the Sweetwater County folks for a first cut at that, but then we may have to referee that. And I think with the two separate regions, then you'll be able to get the locally drawn plan, and the results may be fairly similar. There are some population changes, but fairly similar to what we've got right now.
Good. You have a question, Representative Roscoe?
I'd just like to add to that conversation. I think this is a great start, Senator Scott's plan. And I happen to agree with Representative Ayer that if we do combine 9 and 10, it makes our numbers work better. And I think we can, this is sort of a radical change, but putting Region 4 Fremont, or just put, yeah, region, oh, never mind. I read that wrong. So forget what I just said. But I agree with Representative Ayer about combining 9 and 10. And we met with Senator Dockstader, Representative Summers, and Representative Ayer, myself, and we did work out these numbers, and it worked pretty well, combining Region 9 and Region 10. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So it does strike me as interesting. If you look at the numbers, Lincoln County and Uinta County could be their own districts and stand alone. And on this map, I don't know, neither of their county clerks are here.
Mr. Chairman.
But why are they not just given the same opportunity to stand alone as other counties were in your plan, Senator Scott?
Mr. Chairman, Uinta County is slightly too large. So it can't stand alone.
Got it.
And Lincoln County, it'd be nice to have them able to stand alone. But of all the counties we've got in the state, that's the one where you have to go into a neighboring state to get from one half to the other half. And they've made it work over the years. But in the past redistricting, we've often found that splitting North Lincoln and South Lincoln is what you're going to have to do. And I think to make the population work, we're going to have to do something like that.
Senator Driscoll, and I do see you online, Representative Stith. We'll get there in just a second. Senator Driscoll, question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Little question and a little answer probably. I've had lots of input across the state, and I see how 9 and 10 work, and I've had a lot of input out of Carbon Sweetwater, and they would like it to stay as a region, at least initially. But there's nothing that precludes any of these regions from working over lines and combining and go together. I think initially they should be standalone. And with that being said, I believe that Uinta ought to be a standalone as well. And they can shed some across to another region. We're the same, using the theory you use. Crook, Campbell, Weston actually is over as well. So we're gonna have to shed some population probably into the region south of us because we're bounded by state on two sides. So for my end, and I've said it at the last meeting, I'll say it again, is everything that matters that we do in the legislature as far as money and apportionment wise tends to follow state lines because that's where the money goes. We don't say we give money to Senate Region 1. We say Crook, Campbell, Weston, whatever gets the money, and the money's where it's at. We all get that. So to me, even though it's not lawsuit wise what you redistrict by, it's a principle that matters, because when we're on the floor, the biggest debates are about which county, what town gets money. And representation wise, the more clear you represent a county, the better off you are. And I've got one just to the south of me. I'm looking at Mr. Slagle out there, that their county got butchered in the last redistricting. And I've made a promise to Weston County to try to put them back together, because they potentially could go into the future, if it stays split, with no senator and no House person. And if you want to talk about unfair, that's the epitome of it. So for me, I at some point, I'll bring a amendment to split off one more region into Uinta, and then they can all work across lines. There's nothing to say that two districts can't work back and forth to make what works the best. But for the public out there, and I don't think we totally explained it, because I get a lot of calls, well, you're putting all these counties together, it's not right. And really, for the public that's listening, we're going to hand it to the local areas. We'll all attend, but we'll hand it to the local areas to redefine these districts for House seats and Senate districts in the multiple areas. So if you're out there listening, just because 3 counties or 4 counties are in one area, it doesn't mean it's an at-large vote. It means that there'll be more meetings that give you a chance on a more personalized level to create your own deal. I should have no say down in the Southwest. I really believe that is, I want you guys to go do what's best for you. So that's my deal, because a lot of the calls I'm getting, it's like, this isn't right. You guys are lumping it up, and we're really not. So that's my 2 cents worth. And I fully support Senator Scott's plan. The only change I like is splitting Uinta off and going from there and making people reach out and work with them, but leave them as compact counties as we can. Thank you.
I'm sure there's a question in that. It was Representative Stitt. Welcome. Thoughts on the regional plan or on Sweetwater County, your community, on what you might want to see?
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much. I'd like to echo the comments of Chairman Driscoll. I prefer to keep Region 9 together. I like the regionalization generally. Keeping Carbon and Sweetwater make a nice unit, because if you look at the numbers, it's nearly very close. It's the closest to the ideal number of any of the regions. And so we're not having to borrow from other places. To the extent that the 4 counties, Teton, Sublette, Uinta, and Lincoln, need population for theirs to divide evenly, it seems that the 980 folks that they may need could come from Fremont County. But as a first cut, I would really prefer if Carbon and Sweetwater together as a unit, echoing Chairman Driscoll's comments. And in the past, in 2002 and in 2012, Sweetwater County got chopped up a bit on both its west side and the east side. And it'd be a lot simpler to preserve the community of interest if we can keep Carbon and Sweetwater together as a unit. So those are my thoughts, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Representative Stitt. Any questions, Representative Stitt? Seeing none. Yes, Representative Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'd like to ask Senator Scott, as far as the change that you made from your initial proposal, where the east side of the state, that region was substantially larger. And I guess I don't necessarily have an issue with it either way, other than to say, I think that within that region, and again, you know, not to pick on Campbell County, but it is kind of the gorilla in the room. When it comes to the northeast and the north and the, you know, the east central side of the state, the finances being what they are, it kind of stands as an outlier. And so I mean, I guess my point is that speaking from the fact that for the last 10 years, I've represented Weston, Niobrara, and Goshen counties, all of which have something in common. They're broke. Do you see any necessarily anything better in having that smaller, more compact region than what you had initially proposed, Senator?
Mr. Chairman, I'll take that one if that's okay.
Yeah.
And just as somebody who's Senate District kind of straddles two disparate counties, if we want to divide them up like Representative Hunt was talking about between Commerce County and Platte County, I think that highlights the challenges of the system that we've had since the 90s, where we don't do it based off of counties, you do it based off of population, where you're going to have those districts in the eastern part of the state, probably a few others, that you're going to be disenfranchising half your constituency depending on what the topic is. And so I don't see a way around that with the current system being what it is. I would say I generally support the concept that Senator Scott has of dividing the eastern part into those two regions, because I just don't see how you make it work otherwise. You know, I think when you have a region like you do, where it's basically the entire eastern part of the state except for two counties, you're going to, it just makes it that much more challenging to have meaningful conversations within those communities. And I'd just like to reinforce what several folks have said. You know, just because we divide up, those regions doesn't mean that you're not going to have conversations with the neighboring region. For example, Senator Driscoll and I had a very nice conversation over lunch about basically including southern part of Campbell County into Commerce County to make sure that they're good to go in terms of their population deviation in those three northeastern counties. I imagine a similar conversation could happen between Laramie County and Albany County if we're concerned about the population growth in Cheyenne. So it doesn't preclude those conversations from happening, but it does help get going. We have to have something to start the ball rolling, because we're running on a timeline here also. And so I think that, you know, the more that we can specify those regions, especially along county lines, the better off we're going to be. The more detailed, more meaningful conversations we can have with our constituents when we go back home and see what their input is. And I do see it, particularly talking about the eastern part of the state, and you'll have some letters from the 4 county clerks in Niobrara, Converse, Platte, and Goshen County saying we want to be in a region together. So there's always going to be differences, but there's a lot that unites those areas too, and we don't always have to look at it in terms of poor counties versus rich counties. Talking from my experience at representing a rich county and a poor county, so I think all those things are manageable.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Scott?
Mr. Chairman, and I would add to that, I looked at that part of the country, and Campbell County, the population there, they are entitled to about 2 1/3 senators. And I don't know any way to divide a senator into a third. The Crook and Weston contrast are entitled to about 4/5 of a senator. Those two together, they would have to come in, take some of the Campbell County. And when you look at the numbers, that still doesn't entirely solve it. But, you know, there's a limit to where you can go with Crook and Weston. They're up against South Dakota and Montana. So I had initially thought too, as we did 10 years ago, to put all those together, but we were unable to get a locally drawn plan for that corner last time, as I remember. So I remember they finally wound up getting Tim Stubbson's best judgment. And that was not as good as it would have been if it had been locally, I think. So I think that the LSO suggestion of dividing it this way was sound.
Senator Scott, I think it just occurred to me why I have some concerns with your plan is when I looked at your numbers, you're starting looking at it based on 30 senators, and I'm starting at looking at 60 House members and how things can fit. It is a lot more difficult when you start trying to make sure you're not splitting a senator, with 19,000 people, where I would just say, hey, there's 60 House seats and we just nest them to make a Senate district, which is probably not how the Senate sees things. But it does make it more difficult dividing into 30 than it does into 60 to ensure some of this representation. Speaking of senators, President of the Senate, Dockstetter, is in the room. Welcome. Any comment, Senator Dockstetter?
Thank you. Appreciate all the work on this. Appreciate the comments. Apologize that I'm not dressed accordingly, but I'm out with the grandkids for the 3-day weekend. Folks, to take you back 10 years, and late Representative Robert McKim and I made a lot of trips personally to places like Jackson, Pinedale, Green River, Rock Springs, Evanston, Kemmer, multiple trips, our own expense to get this worked out. We'd had a couple of folks get things started. Part of the problem is if we don't consult with each other early on, then we run into problems. So we took it out to have individual meetings with folks in all of those areas and continued throughout the winter months into the session. And we started to reach an agreement, but it didn't come without personal meetings and kind of a regional approach. And that's what needs to be done. Good Representative Stith noted his area, and that's a good fit, but we still have to talk about one district there, what it does if we do those changes, and that comes with personal meetings. So I'm asking that we don't move too fast with some of the proposals that are already on the table, that will allow us to go out into our regional areas and get this worked out. Senator Case, Representative Illaway were good enough to allow us to do that 10 years ago. We were in a December meeting and we realized that we hadn't quite reached the agreements we needed. And those two gentlemen said, go back out, get this worked out. And we'll actually have a special meeting in January to get this prepared for the session. We went out, we got it worked out. We prepared it for the session. So that's what I'm asking our committee here to do is give us a chance to talk about this in our regional areas. Get it worked out. We'll get some resolve to it. So I'm just asking for the committee not to be too quick while we go out and work out the details in our regional areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Senator Dockstetter?
I think that's good advice, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. That's your opinion. Do we have anyone else in the waiting room?
Mr. Chairman, in all due respect, it's good advice from my standpoint too. Thank you.
Thank you.
We love your shirt, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Do we have any other legislators that want to testify? See, we have two in particular, if they would like to testify. Representative Fortner.
Thank you very much for letting me speak here today in front of you, men and women. I have a lot of people in my district that ask me, how accurate was the census during it was done during the heat of an epidemic that nobody wanted to answer their doors and there was very little conversation that went on. That's the question that they asked me. The second thing I want to bring up is my boy was in a real bad accident here the 26th of July. And you people reached out to me. People in my community reached out to me. People from Wyoming reached out to me. And I'm gratefully thankful for that. Thank you.
Representative Fortner, very sorry for the accident. For me, I did not know about it. As far as the people in your district, the problems with the census, and we all understand there is some, we're stuck with what we've got now. You know, once the federal numbers came out, now we're just dealing with what we have as what's considered evidence at this point. It's good to look in the future to make sure they get them out. You know, a lot of the particularly urban regions go beat the doors for them to make sure they get counted. And we do get to see the results. If you've got undercounts, they treat you poorly. So. Representative Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I attended the NCS Sales Summit and the census were there, and they said basically it was 99% response accuracy from the people who responded. That was their response. So people who responded on the doors that they knocked and the places they went, they're at 99% accuracy. So there's gonna be some places that they don't have correct information, but being in the real estate industry, places that were vacant, places that were for sale, we were constantly getting phone calls asking about to verify data and things like that. So places that were apartment buildings, being property managers, we also got quite a bit of phone calls for that too. So I don't know that that answers your question, but be assured that they really did. They ran around out in the countryside, and they'd call us up and ask us about different properties. But that was the answer from the census people. It was 99% accurate of people who responded.
How does that compare to the, Mr. Chairman? Excuse me. How does that compare to the past years before the epidemic? Do you got any numbers there for me?
And so Senator Scott, all the 2019 numbers are online, the projected numbers, which we were working with. We didn't hit the projected numbers, but correct me if I'm wrong, Senator, the Constitution of Wyoming says we are stuck with the numbers given. So we don't have to like them, but we are basically forced to redistrict by our Constitution on the numbers the Census Bureau gave us. Is that correct?
Known errors in the past. 1990 census, I think it was one of the census blocks that I own, showed 2 people in it. And I can tell you there weren't 2 people there because I had to run them off for trespass. And the only building in that census block was inhabited, but it was a colony of bees. And they do make, frankly, they do make mistakes. They're human. You know, we don't ever get perfection out of something that's human, just in the nature of things. But, you know, Chairman's monitor is exactly right. Our Constitution requires us to use the US Census. My reading of the federal court cases is they require us to use the US Census. And I think very sensible reason, there aren't any better numbers. And we would argue interminably if we tried to say, well, we can change here because the census is wrong. You have to have certainty at some point. And I think the framers of our state constitution were quite wise.
Senator Driscoll, thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, just a tiny bit of explanation. We went to one of the redistricting deals back to Senator Scott's. Many of the errors you'll be able to see in Wyoming are intentional errors. And that's really hard to understand, but what they do is in order to keep from being able to individually identify, and I'll use Senator Scott for an example, he may be the only person in a single census block. So in order to make it where you can't identify exactly who he is and where he's at by an address, they actually will, for worse terms, gerrymander, they fudge it around and put people in the district so that you can't individually identify them. And unfortunately, we don't have access to where they did that at, but they did tell us that you will find that there's what appears to be errors that do not affect the overall, but protect people that live within census blocks. So just explanation.
Representative Fortner, anything else?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm certainly not here to argue or complain about the process. I'm here to represent my district, people in my district, and that's what I'm doing. I deeply respect each and every one of you sitting at the materials up there. You guys are what sets the mold for Wyoming in the future and run it off the past. I recognize that, and I'm a true believer in the Wyoming Constitution. I just don't want everybody to think I'm not. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hey, Mr. Correnti. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Joey Correnti. I'm the co-chair of the Wyoming Republican Party Redistricting Committee. And unlike Representative Fortner, I am here to argue and complain. I'm joking. I looked over this plan and based on previous testimony, this is a great step towards what we asked for, understanding that the posture of the Republican Party was to hold a line based on a principle, but to realistically only expect certain things because we all have rules, whether we agree with them or not. We have issues, we have concerns, and your position doesn't allow you to just automatically accept ours and say, go for it. The regions that are laid out here are more than acceptable for, like I said, a step in the direction we're going, knowing that the numbers don't exist to do one county on everything. And what I said in my previous testimony was, as long as that posture continues and we are moving towards that center number, at least my committee within the Republican Party will do what we can to support that effort. And with this, it's a great tool for me to take back to my committee and to the Republican Party to advocate for the efforts that I'm seeing, so long as the committee will support Senator Scott's plan. On its face, just with the regions laid out, it meets our expectation by over 36%. And then when the individual lines are drawn for the districts, there is no less than a 54% compliance with our hopes and intentions. So we're already halfway there on the first proposal in the second meeting that we've testified with. And I don't know that I could complain or argue on that as long as support continues. I'm going to kind of change hats back to, if it's all right, the chairman of the Carbon County Republican Party, because we are talking about this District 9 or the Region 9. Not only am I the chairman of the Carbon County Republican Party, I am a former candidate for House District 47, which is the largest House district in the United States outside of Alaska. There's only one state legislative district bigger, and that's our Senate district because it includes our donut hole, our nested House District 15. We get it. We have an 8,500 square mile House district. It's all rural. Most of us, at least on the Carbon County side, are really okay with that. I know I could do another campaign. I'm not threatening that I'm going to, but I could do another campaign probably in that region and let it get a little bigger, picking up places like Superior on the north side of Rock Springs, or any of that extra growth around North Rock Springs. And we could argue for that in Carbon County and say, yeah, we're okay, as long as, give Rock River back to Albany County to keep those lines straight. The other side, and I would agree with Representative Stith and his statements and just about everything else I've heard here, Rock Springs and Sweetwater County and the individuals there should be asked and involved. I think they would be willing to work on, hey, yeah, it's going to go over county lines. It's not exactly what the party asked for, but ultimately for the bigger good, the straighter lines in the end. And that's probably one of the best places to do it. In that area, not only do you have strong populations who are willing to show up and have those meetings in Green River and Rock Springs, you have everything from Representative Stith to the chairman of the state Democrat Party. Those people will be there. They will be involved. It won't just be the voice of one party showing up to try to dominate. So I think you have the best opportunity to make this work by leaving the regions the way they're set. Go with your local lines drawing concept and allow even our ask as the Republican Party to be nudged a little based on the acceptance of those local counties. I think the biggest thing we need to make sure we're keeping in mind here is every extra line we draw that crosses an existing line is another split and another consideration for our clerks, and could possibly come into play when it goes to filling vacancies, regardless of who's in charge of that job at the time. If it goes into a third county, That's a whole nother commission that has to be involved. So I definitely think we're getting there. I appreciate Senator Scott and the work he put into this. I can't obviously, outright advocate for it, but I can support the numbers, the percentages I gave you, and definitely will be taking this back to my committee and advocating that this posture maintain. I don't know what the ultimate plan will be. That's up to you. And I would be interested in hearing Chairman Zwaniter's plan that maybe follows the same posture and gets us down to, that lower number of representatives. But our ask was never to reduce the size. It said we can start at 1 and have a smaller government. But the Republican Party said we really want those county lines focused on. The last thing I'll add before I leave is I will continue my ask that the committee consider drafting a resolution to have Article 3, Section 3 of our state constitution amended to match the language of the judicial relief that we currently operate under. Even if the people don't vote to ratify it, that judicial relief is still granted. But at least we've gone and given the people a chance to say, we understand what the court's saying, and now our Constitution actually reflects the process that we engage in every 10 years. And with that, I stand for any questions.
Questions for Mr. Correnti? Your mic on down there? Nope. Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Joy. Mr. Schlegel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alan Slagle, Weston County. I want to thank Senator Scott for all of the work that he's done in this plan. It's quite commendable. I appreciate Senator Driscoll's statement saying he's working hard to get Weston County back together, because we have been split, and it's really not much fun having 2 senators and 2 representatives that represent different parts of your county. And I mean, I understand Senator Scott saying he didn't want to split a little bit of Natrona County off, but that's where I live all the time. And it's not fun, because you don't feel like you truly have fully, not everybody in your county feels like they're fully represented. I mean, it's like, yeah, Ogden represents the north part, and Chip, Representative Hunt, and Senator Steinmetz represent the people in the south, but there's no continuity to where you really feel like you have full representation. And so I appreciate this plan. I mean, I still have some concerns with southern Campbell County going down into the region below and Converse County. And the reason I have those concerns is because when they redivide Weston County, Crook, and Campbell, for those districts, the right area, which is in that southeast corner of Campbell County, would fit into Weston County to make a better district there for that. And so with that in mind, I guess I would, looking at these numbers, I would say if we can leave most of the numbers all in that full region up there in the corner, and then allow the 3 counties up there to work out the process and see if we couldn't be within those numbers. But I appreciate all your guys' work, and I will stand for any questions now.
Questions, Mr. Slagle? Thank you very much, Al.
Thank you.
I do feel to keep Weston or Crook whole, one of them is coming into Campbell County, and under the 60 plan, Campbell County, you could easily fight for 5 House reps and 2.5 senators without having to be nice to your neighboring counties. So I'm sure that regional effort will have a lot of conversation on how nice Campbell County truly wants to be. Other public comment. Clerks have anything? I mean, we have 4 letters from clerks here. Obviously, you've been working on some things. Becky, come on down. And so just general public comment, I think right now Senator Scott's plan is about our only option moving forward, as I don't believe any of the other members or members of the public brought us a different regionalized plan, and the county clerks seem to be in agreement from these 4 counties, from what I understand, with giving yourselves a 4-county region, even though you may be just a little less than full plan. Go ahead, Niobrara County Clerk.
Good afternoon, Becky Freeman, Niobrara County Clerk, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, thank you. First off, I would like to extend my thanks for this daunting task that is not enviable, but it has to be done. So thank you for doing this and thank you for including us. And as was said, yes, there were letters written by four counties. We asked to be whole, to remain whole. As election officials, splits terrify us. And so we would ask that you observe county lines and use those to redistrict as much as possible. I think it's imperative to keep in mind the similarities of the counties, rural populations, economic and geographic locations. And I just want to extend my thanks to my representative and senator. They have been wonderful to work with, and I just want to thank you all for all that you do, and I would stand for any questions.
Questions, Ms. Freeman? Seeing none.
Thank you.
Senator Case.
We have Senator Scott's plan on the table. We don't really have anything else. Can we kind of adopt it as our working model? You know, and I don't mean to overly formalize it or things, but I think we've got very general agreement as this is a starting point. And so I commend my colleague for, he comes through every 10 years. I swear he does. And so I would propose that we do that. I would let the regions know that there's a lot of flexibility and you got to talk to all your neighbors because you can tell the plans aren't going to be drawn around those counties exactly. That's not what it's going to look like when it's done, but it's a starting point that respects the counties. And I concur with my good friends in the Republican Party on that. And also, Mr. Chairman, we've never not, we've left open the issue of multi-member districts. We've left open the possibility that these regions can come up with some multi-member combinations that will work for them. That might make your job easier in some instances. Some areas may not want to do that. And I would also point out that multi-member situations don't have to fill up the entire region. A region could be part multi-member. You could have one senator with 2 at-large House memberships, for example, and the other one's not. We have precedent about that, and there might be a reason to do that in some instances. The precedent comes from a couple of states that do have multi-member districts in certain instances. So I put that on the table, and I would suggest, and even make it a motion if you wanted, that we start with this.
Sir, that was a formal motion, Senator Case, seconded by Representative Duncan. And the formal motion was to generally proceed with the regional plan presented to us today, which leaves Fremont County whole, and work with your county clerks and local constituencies on coming up with some agreeable plans to bring back to this committee for further discussion. Okay, discussion on that committee. And Representative Ottman, I did see you joined us. Didn't know if you had any comments or before we take a vote on the regional plan that was on the meeting materials.
No, I just had a general comment at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I guess if it's related to the plan, would let you proceed, Representative Ottman. If it's
okay.
Sure, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to say I joined in this because I am concerned about some activities that are going on in this time, but I really thank the committee for all the hard work, and also the county commissioners and or the county clerks. What a job. But believe with Senator Scott with the districts, I was looking at Shoshone and had some questions. And so that's a bit clearer to me, but also on some lines that are drawn locally. So I'll just wait for the rest of this meeting and then our meeting that will be here locally with the public. So thank you again. And I am just amazed at what goes on here. So thank you very much for just representing everybody.
We try. Further discussion on the motion? All right, seeing no discussion, all those in favor of tentatively adopting Senator Scott's regionalized plan to move forward, please say aye. Aye. Those say no. Okay, that motion is passed.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Case.
I would like to make a announcement about a regional meeting, if that's okay. Is this appropriate time?
I believe so. Go ahead.
Okay, so everybody wanted to announce that we have scheduled a regional meeting in Fremont County for next Thursday evening. It's from 5 to 7 o'clock. It'll be at the Central Wyoming College Intertribal Center. It's jointly sponsored by Fremont County Clerk Julie Freese, our co-committee member Andy Clifford, and myself. We've invited all of the tribal representatives, legislators, general public, political parties, and we also especially reach out to our friends in the Bighorn Basin, who their districts overlap part of Fremont County. So we invite the members of this committee to attend either in person or virtually. You certainly been most welcome, and we'd look forward to the participation of the chairman should they desire. So there will be no action taken. We don't have any authority to take any actions, but we will sit down and talk about it. The LSO is going to participate. I don't think we've figured out totally how that participation will work, but they've been very gracious to work with Central Wyoming College about scheduling the room and the technology. And it's a start. It might be the first regional one that maybe we could learn how that would work if others want to adopt it. So just putting that out there, Mr. Chairman, appreciate it.
Next Thursday. All right. Is there any public comment generally? I know Representative Greer showed up, just here to listen, or thoughts on behalf of the entire Bighorn Basin? We are generally on schedule. Excellent. We're at the end of our day, and so you're all that's standing between us and driving home.
We're not on Pat Sweeney's schedule. We're on Chairman Greer's schedule.
Welcome, Chairman Greer.
Oh, thank you. And I appreciate the committee's work. And, so there's not a member on the committee from the Bighorn Basin, which poses probably the most difficulty in putting a plan together because, we lost population overall compared to the rest of the growth of the state, but we are somewhat isolated, definitely. And I've been through this before. I see like 4 members that were here on this committee for the last redistricting. I was around, there was no one else, no other legislators in the basin. Back when we did it before, we had Hank, Pat Childers, Elaine, we had Lorraine Corber, we had chairmen and chairwomen across the board. And now I'm the old guy there. So the regionalization component of this, I think, works very well with us. We'll be able to work within those parameters. I'll try to get our folks together, in particular our county clerks. You guys talk about districts and lines. Bighorn County, their clerk has the worst job in the state, I think. But nonetheless, we'll get together, and I'll visit with the chairman in particular to make sure we can do our very best to squeeze those variances down to the degree that we can. One of the comments I did want to make, though, aside from complimenting you for your work, 10 years ago, when we sort of divided up Bighorn County to be able to keep our full representation in the basin, there was a strong commitment and almost a brotherhood within the Bighorn Basin legislature. This was our view, is that if you're in the basin and you have a problem, you call anybody. And that's what we've done. with the loss of some of our folks, we don't quite have that. Maybe that's my fault. I need to get the rest of us back together a little more often and revitalize that view. But, you know, if there was an issue, we would take a call from anyone in the basin. We would deal with it. We would find the right chairman or right committee to deal with it. And so this regionalization has to be looked at through that lens in order for it to work very well for us. Again, I've always said this, I represent all of Wyoming whenever I think and do anything. But I do have a special strong loyalty to Washoe County and the basin. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be quiet after that.
Thank you. Any questions for Chairman Gurr? Not seeing any. All right, any kind of wrap up comment, Representative McGuire? Oh, let's go to Representative McGuire and then I'll go to Senator Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is directed to our most senior senator. You brought up the question with regard to Yellowstone Park, and I haven't seen any place that actually breaks out the numbers from the park boundary. I was wondering, A, where to find that, and B, does the census treat individuals who either live there or in Grand Teton or any of the other park areas differently? Are those numbers presented differently? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, and we can do it on the map program. Senator Scott, though? Thoughts? Yep.
Mr. Chairman, we've got some more work to do here. I've got about 3 or 4 motions I want to make. Are you ready for them?
Representative Duncan, do we have a number of the entire national parks yet? I thought it was about, you keep working on it. And Senator Scott, what's the first motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we tell the people doing the regional plans that the committee is open to both single member and multiple member districts and will tend to follow recommendations from the local folks on that subject.
Second, if that's an official, are you putting that in the guiding principles? We want it written down somewhere when we give the clerks and
I think we
direction?
just need to pass the word to the clerks and the people that are doing it, that either one is something we can look at.
So maybe also we can have like guiding sub principles. Because eventually we will send out some type of statement from the legislature to counties and cities and clerks saying, here's the process, here's what we're asking for, please join in. So the official motion is to let's just call it a sub principle if that's fair. That they can design districts to present to us using either a single member or multi-member format. Seconded by Nethercott. Discussion on that motion.
Let's just do it again.
Now it's official on paper, Senator Case. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. All right, that motion passes. Senator Scott, number 2.
Chairman, I move we instruct the chairman of the committee to make sure there are 1 or more legislators in each of these regions who will take responsibility for getting a regional plan done and putting it together, involving, if possible, to the extent they're willing, all the local legislators and all the local county clerks, and having a meeting, at least one, that the public can attend and comment.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second, and I amend that for my own chairman to be in charge of that for Laramie County. No, you.
Oh, thank you for Laramie County.
Sure.
Yeah, just discussion. I think we would make that work. I mean, I've heard from 10 of the House colleagues of the 60 now on their thoughts on what they'd like. And I think if the committee feels comfortable on Co-Chairman Driscoll and I designating a point person, maybe a senator, maybe a House member, kind of in each of those regions saying, you know, you're the responsible one for organizing and getting things together. I think we can do that. The committee feels comfortable. Okay, question on that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. All right, 3 for 3, Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, I move we ask the Legislative Service Office where current districts go across these regional boundaries that may or may not need to be continued, to analyze the populations in those current districts that cross the regional boundaries currently. Like for instance, Rock River, if we switch that from the Carbon County district back to Albany County, how many people are we talking about in this redistricting? Same with the Bighorn district that comes out of the Bighorn Basin, Fremont County. We need to know how many people are in that portion of the district. So maybe that should be just a request, Mr. Chairman, but I think that would be very useful staff work to help things proceed.
I think we can just consider that a request as we move forward. Also, is that enough direction? Okay. So we'll call that 2.5. Do you have one more, Senator Scott?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know that we need to make it a motion, but I would sure reiterate that I think the population changes are such that this committee and the legislature as a whole should not be in the business of deciding which individual members are going to be in the legislature or which are not, which you can do in a redistricting. And I would urge everybody that's doing these plans, keep everybody with their own core district so that we're not us deciding so-and-so can't be in the legislature anymore.
And so, I mean, the inverse of that, Senator Scott, is drawing districts for legislators to make sure we don't. I mean, it's a fine line of what you're asking. Are you asking to incorporate knowing where legislators live and ensuring we don't undistrict them?
Unless we have to, and I don't think the population this time makes us have to. I think that's the business of the people to undistrict somebody.
That gets interesting, Senator Scott, right? Because then, somebody gets one more term and for the next 8 years after that, that district just looks a little funny. But I mean, maybe that is a committee conversation. I mean, is it part of our work to know where we live as part of our districting plans? Or should that be considered or should that not be considered? Certainly open to testimony or thoughts from any committee member on that. I can see danger either way.
So, Mr. Chairman, they discussed that at the redistricting thing in Salt Lake, and a lot of states, that's the first thing they put up is people's addresses, and they work around that. I think we could probably do this without explicitly doing, just kind of have it be a soft approach. And you can think about it and let's work the issues as we go through and not have a hard rule one way or the other. I know that there's been a redistricting in the past where, for example, the original to single member districts, Dr. Harry Tipton actually accidentally put himself out of his own district and he had to run in another one successfully. And then there was another year where someone was retiring and that worked out very well to make it successful. So you kind of don't say that you want to protect someone's seat no matter what. On the other hand, you don't want to deliberately go after anybody either. Let's let these plans work out and we can solve these nitty problems down the road if we really have to.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think that's sound.
Okay. So we all kind of have a pretty good idea of what that means without any kind of formal guidance. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Right. We're not looking to undistrict anyone, but we're not looking to save anybody and drawing lines that do that.
And Mr. Chairman, back to Yellowstone Park, we are not coming up with huge numbers. So far, I think we're at 38 people. And so like Grant Village has 13, there are blocks that aren't identified, but it's tedious because you can see the park if you go out, but you can't see the census block lines and you got to go back in. And so, but Representative Duncan is carrying on, and is that a new 13? Is that our old? New 13. Okay, so we are at 38 plus 13, 50. Maybe.
You keep counting, Representative Duncan. Representative Hunt.
Mr. Chairman, back to one of the prior motions that Senator Scott made as far as a couple of legislators from each of these regions being in charge of putting together a meeting. Would you, either you, Mr. Chairman, or the committee as a whole, do we want to tack a specific timeline onto that? I mean, like just that as an example, myself and Senator Driscoll report back to you or the entire committee within the next week or two, that we have nailed down a meeting so that we can start this ball rolling. Or just, I mean, as is, ASAP, what would your preference on that be?
That's in the next 2 weeks. And if you're a member of this committee, consider yourself, if there's no one else from your region, you're going to be the person we ask. So, and highly involved. Senator, Representative.
The count's up to 126 for Yellowstone Park. Breaking news.
126, Senator Driscoll.
Let's go ahead and basically approve on the two chairmen. You can get an email and you send out, do whatever dates you want. I do think we need to make sure you notify all the adjoining regions so that they've got the ability to come watch your meeting if they want to. But I do think whoever wants to do it, I'm looking once again to Gillette legislators. If you guys want to put one together, we'll come over. I'll work with you. But as far as I'm concerned, if you want to put one together with your senators and your reps, I'll come over. We're a three county block. You'll get the invites too. Every legislator should get an invite to any regional meeting that happens. So it's not just committee members. It's anybody that wants to come that's from that region or adjoining.
Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, and I would, on scheduling these, we'll need little staff work from the LSO. What's the population in the current districts? What are the boundaries? And give us some subordinate units of population, whether it's voting districts or something bigger than just the census block, so that we can look at it with people and say, this is what we're going to have to do internally to make it work. So, Mr. Chairman, we will have to allow for some staff work time there.
And then committee, I guess we probably should set a timeline for your initial meeting and submission of a rough draft of a plan. It's already the first week of September, and we'd sure like to have kind of the final plan submitted by December 1st is the timeline I'm operating on. So what do you think, 3 weeks? And when do we need to have meetings? By the time we get back, contact everyone, schedule a meeting a week or two in advance, have that meeting, sketch it out, get it to LSO to have a design. I mean, we're talking at least 3 weeks, if not a month.
I think, Mr. Chairman, I think it's basically a month from now, 1st October.
Does that seem fair to everybody? If we schedule another meeting for the first week of October as a group, and then we'll have just an internal email chain in with LSO. All meetings will be public, obviously, in these regions. When we have public meetings to invite city, county clerks, members of the public, interest groups, et cetera. And we'll just keep a kind of, do we have an LSO page dedicated to redistricting? Or just the home page, or can we put one of our 3 home pages as a redistricting page for dates and times, Josh?
Mr. Chairman, we do have a redistricting page. I'm not 100% sure if it's live yet. We were working on it. It's almost there. I think we're possibly waiting for this the portal that's going to be going live also, but we can certainly get that up and be able to post regional meetings and so forth on there, I believe, or at least a link to the might just be a link to the committee page, and we'll try to post the meetings there so people have notice. But there will be a dedicated redistricting page.
Okay, Representative Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think also just a quick add to that it would be prudent in each of us individually working with our local officials, if you could, I mean, that we should probably try and give LSO, 2 or 3 different dates that might work, so that once we're all, sending in our suggested times and places and dates and such, that we're not tripping over each other, so that if nothing else, all the members of the committee have a chance to try and attend these either in person or remotely. So thank you.
So we need to probably book some dates for an in-person meeting. And I think we can have a couple of online meetings, certainly over the next month. That works for the committee. And I'm looking at October 1st week, the 5th and the 6th, that's a Tuesday or Wednesday. We could have I think 1 day to look at rough plans and hear some comments on those plans would probably be sufficient. Committee, does 1 day seem, if we do it somewhere in the middle of the state, you get a Douglas, Casper, Riverton, Lander. I heard Douglas is nice this time of year.
Yeah.
Does that seem okay for our, does a 5th or 6th work in everybody's schedule of October for a one-day in-person meeting? Anybody have a preference on one of those days? Tuesday, the 5th. Looking at the LSO calendar, that Tuesday, the 5th of October work for everyone? For just 6 is better, that Wednesday? Is that possible, Representative Ayer? Either works for me. Well, let's say Wednesday, the 6th and Douglas. That's a little easier for staff to do a one-day meeting, get to Douglas and get home that day.
This is just redistricting.
This is just for redistricting, not our November court meeting. And then so the co-chairman will work with LSO on getting kind of an SOP out to all legislators and elected officials in those areas about what our expectations and hopes are to have at least, one, if not several public meetings in those areas as these plans develop, and encourage participation and input, as well as have that public portal for any member of the public to use. Josh, thoughts?
Yeah, no, we can definitely do that, Mr. Chairman. Also, I just wanted to let you know that there is the redistricting website is at least on the web or on our homepage. If you go to the homepage and go to About the Legislature, there's then a tab for the 2021 legislative redistricting, which has some of the information we'll be adding to that as we get more stuff, but that is currently out there, Mr. Chairman.
And if there is a way to put that maybe easier to find, I think for the next 2 months, there's a lot of cool legislative stuff, but this is probably the most citizen engagement. People are going to our website to look. So I think that's great to have it there. If we could link it to the main homepage when people log to the legislative website.
And Mr. Chairman, I believe that is the plan
On
to have a link to that right on the very front splash page as you go to the website. So it'll be easier to find, but it is out there right now.
So then committee, do we need another virtual meeting by Zoom? We originally kind of tentatively scheduled one for the 15th. I don't know if we do need that, or do we just kind of say we're going to have a regional planning for the next month and really work on it and come back in a month with some pretty solid ideas to discuss and go out and do good? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I think that gives the regions a bit of a deadline and some enough time to make that work. And we can come back and put it together.
And I would say any plan developed before then, if they wanted to submit for,
Sure.
oversight and feedback, members of this committee, we could certainly discuss before then. Senator Scott.
Meetings that some of these regions, we say you've got to give up so much population or take so much population. We've got the raw numbers. We've got a formula for a little extra so the other people can feasibly redistrict. Where a region has to either take or give up, I would like recommendations as to what general areas that should be done in. As part of the regional plan.
I think that's, yep, completely in line. Any other, Senator Case, go ahead.
The update from Yellowstone is that we're up to about 470. We picked up quite a few around Mammoth, but so there.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Scott.
could we ask LSO on that to define how many of those people that are within Yellowstone Park's boundaries are currently counted in Teton County? Because I think that's a suggestion, is that those people ought to be in the Bighorn Basin District.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Case.
I certainly agree. We tried to take out, we took out the ones that were in Teton Park, figuring that Teton got those, but we actually don't know. So, but assuming that there's 500 people that would be in play, they'd be good if they're in Teton now, it'd be good to move them into the basin. That would make things easier.
Mr. Chairman.
Most of them were in Mammoth.
Probably.
So for the
Mr.
people
Chairman.
listening, Chairman Greer expressed support for basin-wide initiatives.
Mr. Chairman.
There you
Senator
go.
Scott and then Representative Duncan.
Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Certain of those, though, will have been counted in our Teton County figures that we've been using. The ones from Mammoth, Old Faithful, and Grant Village, I think, are technically in Teton County. And that's the ones we would switch to the Bighorn Basin districts.
Representative Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. According to the count, the way we were counting them, Mammoth was clearly in Park. And most of everything else was in Teton. So the bulk of those numbers that we counted, it was 200 or 300 were actually in Mammoth. So
Maybe there's no more to have.
maybe there's no more.
Right. Any other discussion come before the committee today on redistricting? Any other public comments that need to be heard? Clerks, you're fully on board and will assist your local legislators and communities on whatever we need or how we can help whatever you need to make this process efficient. Same with WAM, county commissioners. Okay. Well, with that committee,
Is there any general public comment? Unrelated.
no, I didn't look on, I did not look online. Let me double check. No other public comment online that looks like. So with that committee, have a safe drive home. We'll have a meeting in Douglas. LSO, you'll find a capable location, Douglas, with technological capability. And
If not, we'll build something.
it'd be nice. We can go to Clausen's house. Senator Boner. Yep. All right. Anything else in her case?
Does Senator Nethercott have to pay for the damages?
The Judiciary Committee may, oh, she does chair the Committee on Blockchain and Technology.
I believe there's some comparative fault there. that needs to be assessed. Let's send it to the jury.
All right. Well, everyone have a safe drive home.
Good job.
We'll see you all October 6th.